Hello! So this is my recording for my environmental design implementation, middle of the year, and this is my first this is my first reflection on the first domain for Charlotte Danielson, which is 2A, and I kind of chose a very broad thing to do to focus in on for this reflection and for my environmental design write-up, which is at the beginning of second trimester. So I'm treating beginning of year, middle of year, and end of year for my 3 trimesters because I feel like that just makes sense. So the middle of the year kind of started to come up at second trimester, and I actually implemented these things before we started implementing our EDP for middle of the year. But I already knew I was going to do them and had already prepped them in the EDP. So this was the first one that I did, and it's just really big and vague. It is just setting up expectations in a better way, I guess is the blunt way to put it. So first trimester I tried some things out, and it's also my first year at this school and in this school district, and so I didn't really know what to expect. And it became pretty obvious after about a month or so where my issues were, what I was not doing super well at. So I decided at the middle of the year, one of the first things I was going to do was I was going to kind of like reset expectations and use research to do it effectively, because my biggest issue has been that it hasn't been very effective. So I'm just going to kind of quick show what I did, how it went, and what I would maybe do moving forward. So first, one thing to know is that beginning of the year, I had students create the class expectations together. And what I did is I took those expectations and I made them into like a shortened version, basically, that is a little bit more generalized, but also has some better explanations for students as time goes on. I just realized I need to open their packet that they also do that goes along with this. So the class expectations here are the ones that we ended up like deciding on, A, B, C, D, and E, and I give them letters because it helps students keep track, and it helps me keep track of behaviors and following expectations in class, which was a part of this. So first thing I did from what I read online is I needed to make the expectations visible. So first trimester, we made these expectations, and then I did nothing with them. I had the students virtually sign off on them on a Jamboard, and then I never did anything with them again. And I realized that I really did need to post them somewhere in my classroom. So I ordered from Canvas a huge poster, and it now sits in my classroom. And I do like point to it and actually use it really often so far. I've only been doing this a couple weeks, but I can already tell that it's working pretty well. So like if when I ask students like letter B, responding to what you've seen here in class and listen attentively, there's a lot of repeating in Spanish class to get better at pronunciation. So like maybe we go over something, I say, hey clase, repitan, repeat, and then I give them a word like museo, and then they repeat. So I've had a couple instances already where students weren't doing that very well, and then I would say, hey class, letter B, like let's get to it, let's try it out, let's put ourselves out there. And then I make them do it a couple more times till I get more involvement. And I'm just mostly trying to bring them up because of what I ended up choosing to implement, which is a following expectations like notebook that is going to be, they're going to have a paper version that is sitting at school right now that's going to help them see weekly how they're doing, but they're also going to upload each week how they think they're doing virtually for like a prize system that I'm going to do. But this helps break down those letters a little bit more intensely. And so they've already done a couple weeks, and all they did is they put the date, we always do it on a Friday, and their job is to think about Monday through Friday or however short the week was and how that went for them for each of these categories. So category A, were they like 100% of the time tracking the flow of conversation with eyes and ears? They've attended posture. Do they not have side conversations? Do they not have cell phones out or working on other classwork? 4 or 3 or 2 or 1, and then they have a total on the right side. And I am implementing some reward programs with this, but I'm not going to get into that too much right now because that will be a whole separate reflection and thing. This is really just about like the big ideas of what I did differently. So that was one of the big things I got out of my research was you need to have reward systems, you need to have things posted in your classroom, your expectations, and you need to reference them often, and then you need to be consistent. And so one of the things I've really focused in on this was the consistency piece. I've struggled so bad with consistency, and based on my conversations with most people in this program, it's probably like the #1 thing people have said in terms of classroom management that they struggle with is being consistent. So I knew that I needed right away something that was going to make me be consistent, and so something like having it posted, that is not a reminder just for students, that's for me too to be like, oh, hey, look everyone, is it letter C? Who is willing to be vulnerable? Who's willing to raise their hand and be that person? And then what I did do, what we've done in class is I also mark the students on their seating chart. I don't want to show you faces, but I actually mark letters next to their names. So if I notice a student raises their hand, I put a letter C next to their name. And then at the end of the week, I can go back and look, wow, look, this person or these people volunteered a lot in class. Or I put a minus. I don't usually do minus C because there's too many students who don't volunteer, but maybe a minus A next to the name of someone who is having side conversations often in class. Every time they have a side conversation, I just mark them minus A. And then again at the week, I can look at it. And what I do is when they do their weekly check-in, I actually change their grade if I don't agree with it. This doesn't go in the grade book. We don't grade behavior at the school, but I talked to them about how that would look. Like I would literally probably cross it out. So here was an example one that we went through in class. This was like my example slideshow of what this packet was going to be about. So the yellow was what they put, and then I showed them like, here's what it would look like if I change it. Like I'll put an X through it and change it. Sometimes they even up what you put, because sometimes students are really hard on themselves, and I don't think that you're doing that badly. And then it changes their total score, and they need a certain specific score for the reward system I'll talk about in a different video more. But it really is meant not as a punishment, but meant as more of a reward for following expectations. But yeah, posting them in the classroom is super helpful, making them have a reward system built on it. They're already excited for it, even though we went to distance learning, so now we're kind of like in a weird middle ground. When we come back, I know it's gonna be on point. I also did things with phones that, again, this whole reflection is about how I'm overall changing things, and one thing I'm changing again is plans that help me be consistent. So with phones, I chose, like, I made a sign that goes up that shows when phones should be out or shouldn't, and then students have to put their phones in their backpack when it says that they shouldn't have it out, because on their desk or in their pockets is too tempting and too hard to tell what's going on. So those are some ways in which I've tried to be more consistent with myself, and now I don't have to do a warning system and try to remember how many warnings I've given and then give one kid like 6 warnings and one kid 0 warnings when I get frustrated. It's just always, when it's red, I just take the phones right away. And again, I'll also talk about that one in a separate one. Just again, trying to show the consistency piece that has been very helpful for me throughout this. And then getting student attention, I haven't had to implement it in other classes, but I had to implement it specifically in 1 hour, that they really struggle to be quiet when it's time to move on to the next activity, or when it's time to have a discussion or to reflect on what happened or volunteer for like certain things. They just really struggle with that. So I have a bell, like a bellhop bell that I ding to get students' attention. And in years where that's a problem, if students are struggling with that, then, I mean, it is a part of the expectation part too, right? It's letter A for the most part. Maybe a little bit of letter E, right? Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing and engaged in class? So for me, when it came to bringing attention, I don't have any classes, 3 out of my 4 classes, I don't really have to worry that much about letter A. It's more individual students that are distracted, but one class, it's like everybody. So again, the consistency part was the most important part here. So what I chose to do is, well, first I read up on the research and realized that what I need to do more than anything is, 1, I'm not modeling it. I've never modeled it. I just tell them when you hear this, we need to be quiet. And 2, I don't, make students do it over and over until they get it right. And those are like the 2 biggest things I found in my research. So I did that. When second trimester started, I said, hey, we know what this bell is, but it never works. It doesn't seem to work. We need to make the bell work. I also let them choose a sound. They actually chose, looked up a picture so you can see, there's like this mariachi dancing dog that my parents got me years ago. They chose that, so instead I play that. It looks like this. And when it starts, their job is to be quiet within like a couple of seconds, maybe 1-2 seconds. And when they didn't do it the first time, then we practiced. So I said, all right, everyone start talking again. I'm gonna play the dog, and then if you don't quiet, we'll do it again and again and again. And I've done that consistently every time that it's a problem. So when I press the dog, even if it's been like weeks since we've had a problem, if they don't quiet down within like a couple seconds, then I say, okay, now we need to try again. Everyone talk to your neighbor. And I can already tell they're like, ugh. And I'm like, well, and it's gotten quite a bit better already so far. So moving forward, because I know this video is getting long, right? Consistency is the biggest issue I've had. Consistency is what I'm trying to address in all parts of engagement with this. Moving forward, I would say 2 big things are showing up for me when I think about this. One of them is making sure that consistency is continually evolving, or at least the engagement, or I should say expectation practice is evolving. So there's always new steps or new issues that pop up. So like right now what I'm noticing is they're now getting better at, I play the dog and they're all quiet. Then then I say, okay, great. And then I start talking. And then within like 30 seconds or so, they start talking again, right? They get onto side conversations or they think something I said is funny and then we get off. So I'm trying to figure out how to, I don't know, do better with that, I guess. And then the second one is engagement. So our engagement versus compliance that we just talked about in relation to my classroom expectations. Yeah, yikes, right? You can kind of right away go, I see here that you're going for compliance, yeah? So I don't think it's something I'm going to change immediately, but maybe end of year it's something to add or to think about. How can I change this to make it so that it is more about engagement than compliance? Instead of, here are these, even though these were based off of what students chose as most important expectations and engagement are, I think, something that you have to think about really carefully and how they work together, right? Because following expectations is not the same as engagement, and your classroom, I don't want to say you have to choose between the two because you shouldn't have to, but it almost feels like you kind of have to based on what we read about it. I don't know, just a lot to think about and to start to dig into for how I would maybe change this moving forward. Like, instead of having all of these specific ones, could I have students make their own third trimester? Could I have them decide to them what it looks like to be engaged? Because letter A is really like, are you engaged? And letter E is also another form of engagement. So then, like, can they instead replace this box and define for themselves what it looks like? Like, maybe they don't look at me, but maybe they have to, like, I put my phone in my backpack and I don't know, don't work on other work during class, but they don't need to look me in the eyes in order to be paying attention. I don't know, something to think about moving forward. So, yeah.